welcome to the final day of Break the Wall Sexuality Revolution Collaboration, a place where we talk about everything sex, sexuality, pleasure, reproductive health, and rights, where we bring young people to the center of conversations that matter. This is an event curated by Mash Project Foundation and Pursuit of Balance Nina Kler, supported by our partners Durex Powered Condom Alliance, the Birds and the Bees Talks, and of course our media partners Daily Hunt and Quint Fit. Digital partner Josh, knowledge partner Shivnada University, and Purpose. I am Medha Claire, and it has been wonderful 4 days. I've been backstage with some of the most phenomenal people working on SRHR, sexuality, and pleasures, issues that are really close to my heart. It has been such a learning experience. Without further ado, let's start the event with our first panel with Parthvi Singh, assistant editor at Quint Fit, in conversation with Harish Iyer and Ayesha Adlakha, talking about consent abuse. Over to you, Parthvi.
Thank you so much, Medha. I'm actually really glad I got this opportunity from Nina. When she reached out to me, I was like, "Are you sure?" But then she also understands how close this topic is to me, consent and abuse. And so we are partnering with MASH Project and Nina Claire. I'm actually thankful to both for giving me this opportunity. And today we have with us Harish and Aisha. Harish is one of the award-winning equal rights activists, and at the same time, he's actually one of uh, the only Indian national for the most influential LGBT people in the world, I guess, Harish, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, your mic, Harish, can you switch on your mic? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And
Thank you so much,
yeah,
Patrick. Mhm.
Harish also does the weekly column Sexol for Quint Fit. And so, whoever needs any advice regarding relationship, sex, sexual tips, your sexuality, gender, anything, feel free to reach out to Harish. And we also have Aisha with us today. And Aisha is a digital strategic consultant for number of brands. She's like a celebrity in her own way, and she is an entrepreneur. She is an ex MTV VJ also. Okay, whatever. How many things have you not done, Aisha? Like,
Hi, Parthvi. Hi, Harish. I'm so happy I'm here, you guys. Yeah, man, one of the toughest things I find doing is introducing myself. It's not very fun at dinner conversations when my parents are out. They introduce my brother like, oh, he does this. And it's like a one-line answer. And with me, they're just kind of like, we're going to go get another drink. Aisha, can you explain what you do? But yeah,
yeah,
I
totally
struggle
get
with
that.
that. But I'm sure you guys also feel that there's so many people our age in our generation, especially with times right now, that wear many different hats and have careers that could not have even been imagined like a decade ago. So it's been fun.
All right. So the topic for today is consent and abuse, and I know that both of you really care about this topic equally. So my first question for you guys is, what does the word consent mean for you? Even if we talk about within the context of interpersonal relationships, do you feel it's just limited to sex?
Aisha, you want to take that or should I? Okay. I think I think it's beyond sex. It's consent on a lot of issues. Um, it could it could not just mean, and sex by itself is a broad term. It's not
Yeah.
just sexual intercourse that we're talking about over here. Consent before hugging people, consent before speaking to a person, before without making, and there are ways of making no, no, of actually not spoiling the joy of being surprised, and yet taking consent. I think there are ways and means of doing that as well. So it just doesn't need to be a manual that you need to follow, because people often think that every time we speak about consent, there is going to be a manual where you go and hug a person and say, "Can I hug you? Can I kiss you?" It doesn't need to be that way all the
Yeah,
time,
even
but you
with
could.
children, even with
Yes,
children,
yes.
how parents, how they are like dance in front of all these uncles and aunties, or
No,
just
and
narrate a
this,
poem.
oh God,
Yeah, yeah,
oh God, the way they pick your cheeks, and I mean, not the
touching
butt cheeks,
children.
but even the butt cheeks, actually, you know,
Yeah,
even the
yeah,
butt cheeks.
they
And
do
they're
that,
like, okay,
unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it's a lot. It's a broad term. It's the scope is not so limited just to sexual intercourse.
Yeah. Do you have
Aisha?
to say
Yeah, but
anything, Aisha?
I agree. I feel like I mean, sex is like one really obvious realm in which consent should be very explicitly asked for and received. But I would say even things like, man, getting a photograph clicked, or like maybe asking to dance with someone, or maybe even saying that I want to cut in line before going to the bathroom, like because I have an emergency. Like all of this essentially is about asking and waiting for an answer before you choose to act. So sex is definitely like, I mean, it's a no-brainer, but I think it starts like in your head. The way you formulate that question for yourself, that's the actual learning that you should take when you're thinking about, do I have agency to be able to respect another person's agency? Like, would I want to be asked the same thing, and that's why would I want to ask them? I face this a lot of times. I mean, for me, the biggest example of not caring about consent is genuinely when people just choose to like take photographs, right? Like they'll, if they recognize me somewhere or whatever, they come and they don't even wait. They're not even like, hey, can I take a selfie? There'll be some cute kids who'll come and be like, hey, can I take a photo? But most people just like come barge right in. They see two people taking a photo, and then the next thing you know, some guy has got his arm around you, some uncle is holding you by the waist, and some, it just goes out of hand. And I'm just like, when did I stop becoming a person and become this like life size banner that people just want to come and stand in front of and take photos? It's I think it definitely goes not beyond, but I'd say like a huge number of steps before sex. So yeah, to answer your
Yeah,
question, I
even
feel like
simple,
consent is
like
beyond.
even the simplest of things, like like how friends think it's okay to force people to drink, the peer pressure to drink or to smoke, that
Yes,
thing, and
that's
when
a big
they
one.
expect you to take shots. So like
And
shaming
it's
people
not
who
even
don't.
about permission, man. It's about like how dare you say no? As if like you
Yeah.
signed like a release form by like, I'm coming to your party, that means I'm gonna do your drugs, I'm gonna smoke your weed, I'm gonna drink your drink. What the hell? Like, I didn't maybe sign up for that. And like there should be something that goes beyond, do you want a drink? And like looking at it like, hey, what an idiot, they don't want that drink. That's also part of consent, because like, hey, I didn't sign up to be like belittled because of my choices.
Harish, we can't hear you.
And also beyond that, when we think about actual sex as well, when actual sexual intercourse is happening, there are times when people would remove the condom in the
Oh
middle
yeah.
of the intercourse, so and they'll be like, so did you ask permission before removing the condom? Did you seek whether this is whether it's okay to remove the condom? And they would say the condom has just torn, but that might not be the reality many a times.
Yeah.
There are
Also,
slippages
like
that
making out. People are making out. You're not supposed to move. Like you can't go further without asking whether a person wants to go further.
yeah.
People are like,
And it
oh,
doesn't
there's
need to
you.
be
But
can I have, and partly it doesn't need to be can I have sex with you. It could also be can I move further. I mean, it can be made. There are terms and terminologies which can sound sexy without looking like you're reading out from a medical journal, you know.
Aisha, I cannot hear you. Your mic is off. Yeah.
That is so on point. I've heard some of the most educated, smart, like, straight up stand up guys, right? Like, when we talk about, and we discuss this amongst our, like, at least in my friends group, talk about this a lot, because it's to navigate this world where people have to like ask you if they can kiss you versus like just following this music and the sexy vibe. These guys also feel like it breaks the spell to have these words in the middle of that romance. But like Harish is saying, like, screw the terminologies and like throw away the medical manual. But there are ways to make someone feel comfortable, and there are ways to like be intuitive enough to know that this is okay. Like, even when you're holding someone's hand, right? Like, or just like moving from like a general dance to like a slower, more intimate dance, you could be like, is this okay? And it's the same thing with like moving from like having normal sex to suddenly want to go explore something else, and like you want to try something new. That should definitely be a conversation that you, if not have before, can have with your partner. I mean, you're comfortable enough with them to like see each other naked and like touch each other, but you're not comfortable enough to use your words. To me, that's a little bit of a it's a bit of a like a mind whatever fuck, but like I feel like it's time we kind of made it sexy. I think some TV shows and stuff have made it sexy, and I genuinely take cues from like media. I take cues from like a bunch of shows, and I see that it's the opposite of breaking the spell. I feel like if someone has the courage and the confidence to like come and be like, hey, I really want to kiss you right now, for me that's like yes, just like a really big yes from like being able to like be asked that. It makes you feel so much more comfortable.
Yeah, consent is sexy.
Consent is
Hundo
sexy,
P.
really sexy.
Yeah. But I
So,
actually had a question about this. Sorry, I hope I've been really curious
no.
about this. And Harish, especially since like I learned that you were going to be here and you worked in this space for so long, and you guys must have had some really tough conversations along the way. I've actually been struggling with something very similar. So when you play the pimp, right? You play the matchmaker, you introduce two friends, and you're like, oh, I hope they get along, and then they do start getting along, and then the night progresses, and you see that they find corners to go and talk to each other in, and then the alcohol content in their bodies increases, and like the different stages move on, and at some point you start feeling like maybe one of them is feeling uncomfortable. Or one of them wants to pull away, or just like something happens and like one of them wants to immediately call a cab and go home. As the person who like set this up, where is your responsibility? Like, what should I be doing? I don't
not
know.
just not just you, Aisha, everyone who has the vibe and who understands that there's something uncomfortable happening. I think the first and foremost is to take the person who you think has been victimized to a safe place where the other person is not there, and to let that person cool, let that person attain some kind of an equilibrium before you take. Usually what people do is they do this drastic thing, oh, let's call a cab,
Yeah,
let's do this, as if and that sometimes traumatizes the person even more. The best thing
yeah,
would be to take them. I mean, you shouldn't lose your cool. Okay, even if that person, and this could happen, and this is something that happens, we all would have had one experience or so. It's more common than uncommon. So
yeah,
I think it's important to take them to a quiet corner and to speak to them,
right,
or rather not speak to them, just be there, hold their hands till they cool down, till their blood pressure cools down, see what has happened. Okay, and then slowly take them off the space, and
yeah,
probably send somebody depending on which gender has assaulted them. I mean, women can assault women, men can assault men. Ensure that that particular
yeah,
gender, the person representing that gender, is not with that person, and ensure that that person has some company. So I think that's separating them, and to ensure that physical safe space becomes
yeah,
your first priority, and then look at other situations, because you can't work as if you're working in a trauma room, because
absolutely.
it only adds
You're
to
right.
the mental trauma. Mhm.
That definitely.
Also,
I mean, it's so wise to like first like pull the brakes on the panic and then like take a beat and then reassess what's going on. But instinctively, regardless of which one is my friend or like what I've actually seen, the person who's feeling uncomfortable is the one that I generally like rush to like just calm them down because they're feeling uh not safe, right? And then when you get into the details, very often like I think I just have this, maybe it's just me, I just have the bias that like the victim is the one that was feeling uncomfortable and that's why they are the only victim. But a whole lot of times it's just classic miscommunication. It's just really bad reading of signs, and it's terrible communication on like both of those parties sides, right? And very often like the person who's made to feel or made to seem like they crossed a line is just, they never get to say their side of the story. They never get to even like come to a point where they can apologize before it's blown out of proportion. I feel like being in that space where you're in the middle and they're both your friends, it feels a little unfair that just because this one called out first for help doesn't mean that the other one was also not feeling a little strange about what went down. because their
I
intention probably was not that.
Aisha, that's a long, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to adjudge with what is right and
Yeah,
what is wrong. But it's important that both parties feel safe. Many a times the one whom it could be anyone. It could be a man who comes and says that I'm feeling uncomfortable and I'm going home. Okay,
yeah,
and it could be a man and a woman who are in this thing. At that
true.
time, it becomes your responsibility. Who's panicking at that moment? Get the panic under control, and then see, then assess the situation. Don't get into what's right and what's wrong. Understand
Yeah.
that both whoever is panicking needs your support at that moment,
Mm,
and then you have laws and you have psychologists to do their job. So as listeners, all that we can do is listen. We can't we have If we don't have a degree in clinical or counseling psychology, we shouldn't try
yeah,
being counselors. We can be listeners, we
absolutely.
can explain things, we can simplify things for people, but we can't be counselors for them. And then let us,
Absolutely.
even if there's somebody who has done something wrong, if they are friends, then we need to ensure that the wrong doesn't happen again. And just by ostracizing them, we don't solve the
Yeah,
issue. So
that's
yeah,
so right.
so I would stand up with people who have even done wrong, not stand up with them and encourage them, but stand up with them so that it doesn't happen again. Ostracizing might not help. I mean, that's my way of looking at things, but for somebody else it might be another way, and there's no one way of looking at issues like this.
You're so right.
Also,
I
sorry, just a second, Aisha. I just need to ask one thing. Harish, since talking about this same thing, you know how you are like you being from the LGBT community. So, from one queer fellow to another queer fellow, I wanted to ask you about, how we discuss about within the community, like because a person might be gay, or they assume that it's okay for them to touch the person of the other gender in whichever way, that thing. And people think just because you're not sexually attracted, it's okay, and it's not. The entire community, and when you stop, you sometimes they end up calling the other person homophobic. Like, basic
Mm.
wrong touch is wrong touch. Like, you don't
Yeah,
always have to be attracted.
and for instance, just because you're not attracted, you take those leeways. And as a part, I mean, I should also admit there are times when I have been very free with women. Okay, and I've realized later that probably I shouldn't have. Not that I crossed the line or something, but there have been times when I have been freer, where I would just go and I think that, hey, I don't feel sexual attraction, so I can just go and hug a person, okay, or pass some comment on a person's breast, maybe, okay, saying that, oh, I'm anyways not interested, so I can say anything that I want, even if I don't know the person. If you share a vibe and you're very close, and that's the way you talk, it's a part of your everyday lingo, it's a different thing, right? But there were times when even we all have learned from our mistakes. So I'm not I do not speak from a holier than thou, or rather from the Indian context, holier than cow um, uh, context. But the fact that it's important to assess before you touch anybody, even somebody in of your own gender. In fact, I've been more careful about touching men in my organization than touching women. Okay, but I need to be careful about touching women also. So the thing is, anyone who feels uncomfortable, you can't take anyone's body for granted, and that should be a rule that everyone follows.
Yeah, absolutely. So, wow, this was very well explained by both of you. So, the next question is emotional abuse as valid as physical abuse? Because, the validity, when people feel like the things like people say, even when you see it in the news, nobody cares if someone gets emotionally violated, and people, the moment you hit someone, that also there's a threshold to it. For example, that movie Thappar, the lawyer saying that. Ek thappad hi to tha. So, something like that. What do you think? How do you think we describe the validity, or do you feel all of it is equally valid? How would you explain that?
I think I'll take that, Aisha. Is that all right? Yeah. So so one of the uh, I think we all are born out of patriarchy, especially in our country, everywhere in the world actually, but definitely in our country, we are born out of patriarchy. I mean, we have a staple diet of patriarchy every day. So and many a times it's considered, like for instance, I've never seen my father raise his hand on my mother. Okay, but I've seen my father being abusive towards my mother, and that has had an effect on me. Okay, so verbal abuse is abuse, and that's something that people have to understand. It's only now that a conversation about mental health is coming to the fore. Until now, it'll be like, Acha, what Tapsi Pannu's character in that film was told every time, "Ek thappadi to hai." That's something that we are also taught, right? I mean, most of there were many times when I've intervened, when a father, when a parent in the road. I mean, I don't post them that often, but there was a time when I used to post all these anecdotes on Facebook, and where I've intervened when just to demonstrate that people should intervene. Okay, and if I just keep it to my small audience, it wouldn't have helped. So I used to share it publicly on why it's important to intervene when there's somebody being violent to their children. And in India, it's like, spare the rod and spoil the child is something that's taken directly. That means you have to be violent towards your children to teach them something. And it's also generational abuse. In India, it's like, oh, my parents beat me up and I
Yeah,
turned
yeah,
out
yeah.
pretty well,
Yeah.
so I will beat up my children because they need to be disciplined. My mother cannot raise her hand on my dog. I mean, it's a strict no. There's a even if I have to raise my hand on my dog, it's first through voice or anything like, even if they shout, I get very pissed off. So I think it's important that we bring up. I tell my mother that, in our family we need to bring up our children like the way we bring up our dogs and cats. So so one of the things is, violence is not okay. Shouting at your children is not okay. The moment in India, the problem is that you have your umbilical cord attached throughout life. You don't need to have it attached. The child is a separate human being with their
The tough
own,
love, the idea of it.
yes, they have their own bodies, they have their own sexual feelings. You do not own their bodies, you do not own their this thing. You can guide them, you can guard them, but you can't really police them all the time. You can't really verbally abuse them all the time, and that's something that we have to learn. We have to learn because we do have a culture. We have generational abuse as a culture which gets propagated. Everyone that I know who has been successful would say, you know what, my mother used to just come here and she used to slap me on my face, and we just turned out really good. I'm so thankful to your mother. I said, no, your mother has been a bitch. Your father has been a bitch. Okay. So we think that, oh my God, how do I say these words? But the truth is that, okay, I might not go and tell the person that on their face, but that's what I would feel within. It's not okay to abuse your children and call it discipline, or anybody to abuse anyone and call it discipline, not even your juniors.
Yeah, also that entire idea of, giving your like telling your child that if you'll do well in this thing, then only you will get this. Everything becomes like a bribery
Oh,
barter thing. Like,
पड़ोस का पिंटू, आई कॉल इट पड़ोस का पिंटू. पड़ोस के पिंटू में देखो कितने मार्क्स लेके आया. I said पड़ोस का पिंटू या पड़ोस की शीला, सुशीला. Okay, so you don't have to be पड़ोस का पिंटू or पड़ोस की सुशीला. You can be, every child can grow up to be the best version of themselves. They don't need to be like Pados Ka Pinto or Pados Ki Sushila. So I think that's one obsession that we have also. And all our lives, we teach our children to be independent and everything. I said, no, you have taught them comparison. How will they be independent? They'll constantly be comparing their marks with another person. Sorry, Aisha, I took more time.
No, no, no. Of course not. But I mean, I'm not a parent, but I completely see this Pavlovian way of trying to impart like wisdom to our kids, right? Positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, comparison, which they call healthy competition. It's all, I think we've already spoken about like verbal abuse. Obviously there's physical abuse, but then there's also non-verbal abuse, right? Like I mean, I know of like instances where passive aggression is used like a proper weapon. Like it's literally used like, you know, like a bend to my will kind of weapon. And that actually is what abuse is, right? So I mean, for someone who's been abused, that incident or event or person may lead to a wound, may lead to trauma, may heal, may not heal. That's invisible for us to know. In the same way that the weapon of choice for that abuser is also invisible. We don't know if it's going to be physical. We don't know if it's going to be mental. We don't know if it's going to be emotional. But at the end of it, at the heart of it, it is misusing power of some kind that you have. You're either stronger than them, you either have authority behind you, you either have something that they need or want, and you're misusing that. And that I think translates to abuse. It happens for, I think it happens in so many more instances than we can even like put down under umbrellas anymore. It happens in like office situations. It happens with, you know, your landlord. It happens with, you know, your the didi who comes to clean, you know, your home. It could happen with anyone. It's literally just who's more powerful and what power they have over you. Is it money? Is it physical power? Is it authority? It's that imbalance, right? And some people just don't
Religion.
know how to use
Yeah.
it. Religion, absolutely. Or being accepted in, you know, a certain community. Someone is, you know, is the gatekeeper of that power, and they feel like that entitles them to like mistreat you whichever way that they want, because ultimately what you need makes you far more desperate. And you can't really tell what those wounds are, like emotional wounds, physical wounds. Never know.
Yeah, plus whoever, like usually when we notice anyone who's an abuser always has this sense of superiority, you know? Like, okay, I can do this to the person because they won't be able to do anything. And I can do this because they owe me something. That thing that you owe me. How dare you? Like, no, not to think, like, how can you think you don't owe me? So this entire field, it's a power play sort of a thing, I feel.
Yeah. It is. It is. I
I feel
mean,
like sometimes it's not even like you owe them. Sometimes it's just because they can. I will because I can.
Yeah.
This is for me to validate my power, validate my position, to like feel like I'm in charge. You know.
Yeah, it's a very narcissistic and egoist personality, two different personalities. The egoist gets abused by the narcissistic ones. And the problem is like how people say that, oh, the person has narcissistic personality disorder. I was like, first of all, that person is a terrible person. Let's acknowledge by that first. Instead of giving them the other benefit of doubt, first we need to acknowledge that first. Because the person who's getting abused, if you're trying to justify the person who's the abuser, how will you justify the person who's getting abused?
yeah. I think more than that, the way I look at things is look at look at the deeds committed, okay, rather than the person themselves. Where I would hold it against the person as well. But there are times when people it matters how the person treats you in that situation. A person can be very good. Like, for instance, we all have most of the abuses that happen, abuse of power that happens in our homes is by our own relatives most of the times. Okay. So the relative might be, Are दादाजी तो बहुत अच्छे हैं, कितने अच्छे हैं दादाजी. Dadaji is very nice. He's such a respected person. No, but he could be a rapist too. Okay.
Yeah.
So he could be respectable to one person. He could be a rapist to another person. So that's how power plays. So most of the times, I think with respect comes abuse. Respect is power. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to be disrespectful to people. So I always say this, and this was in one of the shows, Satyamev Jayate, that I attended, where one of the people over there had said, okay, when it's about respect behavior, okay, if somebody is behaving kind towards you, somebody who's behaving sweet towards you, come somebody who's respecting consent, respect behavior over age. So you could have a 90-year-old person who could be an asshole. You could have a 5-year-old child who could be the most respectful, right?
Yeah.
So you shouldn't be forced to fall on the feet of a 90-year-old who's being an asshole, or a 30-year-old, or a parent who's being abusive. It shouldn't be a norm. Respect should not be a choice, but we should understand the level of respect that we give people.
Respect is earned, but unfortunately people are like, you need to respect that person because the person is older. But again, we are also taught that respect is earned. Then why should I just give respect to that person
Yeah.
because of age?
Yeah, not being ageist over here, but just it's important that we respect behavior over age. So
It's
I
important
feel
to respect everyone in general. Yeah.
that's true. That's true. Wish we do.
Yeah. So, moving on to our next question. What are your views on how an individual's experience with violation of privacy or consent or being abused, how does it affect their personal relationships or the way they see love?
Aisha, I have been cheating all the time and going first.
I mean, no, you actually got me thinking on a completely different track. I love what you said about let's look at behavior, not age, which means that behavior can also be learned and unlearned, changed and rectified. Sorry, I went down that track. Very interesting. But I think when someone says privacy to me, my first thing is on social media. I think the very fact that people see, and I can only speak from my experience, obviously, but when people see um, someone putting up like images of themselves in which they are sexualizing themselves, like they're happy to like share their body the way that they want, and they're happy to like be flamboyant in that sense, etc. I think they kind of feel like we've given the keys to our privacy, and that means that I'm inviting unsolicited pictures from people. I feel like they tag you as the sort of person who's not very private, or who's not very doesn't care about this stuff, and so it's okay to take that consent and throw it out the window, and I will show you my genitals, whether you ask for it or not, etc. For me, I feel privacy gets bastardized a lot on social media. It happened to me at an age where I was still trying to figure out what it means to be free and independent, and outside of my like parents shelter and all of that. So I think in terms of how it affects the way you receive love is kind of I mean, it's kind of sad, but you kind of like lose. How do I put this politely? You kind of lose the sense of like
Don't put it
your
politely.
body. Okay, great. Thank you. I think it helps to have your permission. But yeah, it kind of makes you feel like my body is just a body. And you stop celebrating it the way that you would celebrate your body. You would just feel like I remember this like, during some of the bigger shows that I did. I felt like a hanger. I felt like I was just people were touching me all the time. There was just someone comes and makes you wear something, and they put on makeup, and like you just lose this sense of like owning your own body. So even when you got compliments for it, even when someone loved your body, it didn't feel like yours. It didn't feel like mine. It felt like yeah, it's just my body. Okay, I'm gonna go get a haircut, and like I'm gonna chop off like whatever 8 inches of hair. Everyone will be like, oh my god, how do you feel? And I was like, I'm not attached to it anymore. There was like a lot of disassociation. I feel like that happens when your privacy kind of gets snatched from you. And this is how it happened with me, and it takes some time to like reclaim it and like bring it back, and return to yourself, and not feel like every time someone is calling you sexy, it's like a mockery. There's a whole graph of like that journey where you're like, oh my god, I'm getting so many compliments, this is amazing, I feel sexy, but no, it's my body, it's horrible, this is not me, this is not who I am, this is all they think I am. And you go up and down that mountain, and at the end of it, you feel like if I was far more if I was respected for my choices of putting myself out there instead of shunned down, then maybe I would still be able to love myself a little bit more aggressively, because the kind of attention you get when you let go of that privacy and someone inhabits that space that you weren't ready to inhabit, you forget what it's like to be loved. You just know what it's like to be thrown money at. You know what I mean? Like it's like a dirty feeling versus like a beautiful, validating feeling.
I think the Instagram world has made bodies a commodity. Okay, without so you just as you said, like it's very common in the advertising industry, Aisha, where you simply because I have been a part of that industry where
Right.
people just they just treat you like bodies, you know. So I've been in a room where they were testing for an underwear ad, you know, and I was just looking at people coming and saying, "नहीं नहीं, इसका तो boobs बड़ा है, इसका तो boobs छोटा है." I mean, that was regular conversation in front of
Yeah.
the person. I said, "How are you to uh, this thing?" Of course, I left that on all these grounds, but yeah, but the thing is, it is a thriving industry which
But Harish,
survives
the
on that.
thing is, I'll tell you the weird thing here, right? Like how you also said that, Instagram's turned these bodies into commodities. I feel like if anything, Instagram was a good attempt at democratizing that, right? Like earlier, if I would go for this underwear model shoot, etc., and some magazine or some brand would use it and put it up, they're essentially selling their product because they get to objectify and sexualize my body for their profit and their benefit. But today, if I do it on my own Instagram for my own benefit and my own profit, then suddenly I am not something that they would want to like give me money for. Suddenly I am I don't have claim over my privacy. I am loose, or they slut shame you, etc. But if a brand does it, or if I'm doing the very same thing on the cover of a famous magazine, that's okay. But if I'm doing it for my own, like
Yeah.
Instagram, even if I'm doing it to like whatever, even if I want to show skin, or like people want to like be provocative on their own platforms, that's not okay. But if you're on like a magazine cover, or if you're in the like the one of those famous calendar shoots, you're golden. That's like you're a Victoria's Secret model, good on you. But if I do it myself, oh, she wants my dick pic. What the hell
I
is that?
No, I correct
Okay,
myself. You're right. You make a
guys,
point.
we are
Yes.
actually sorry to cut you guys. We are actually running short of time, so we have like 10 minutes left. So
Oh,
I
okay.
need to ask you one really important question. This will be the last one, and we'll wrap up after this. The question is: do you believe sexual abuse is mostly seen as a woman's issue, and do you agree with that categorization? Like, do you believe treating sexual violence as a gender-neutral crime would be preferable?
Well, I am a rape survivor. I was born with a penis and I was raped from the age of 7 till the age of 18. And I have spoken about it in various forums,
Yeah.
and it's important for people to recognize that abuse is beyond one gender over the other. I know of many cases in the Quint Fit column, Sexolve also. We have dealt with many cases where people have written in about women being abused by women, men being abused, boys being. So it's sometimes anyone who has power over another, who's like it could be age giving that power, it could be position giving that power. It's more about power than the act of the act of having sex or the act of abuse. So all genders are vulnerable. All genders are vulnerable, and the reason um, why boys are more susceptible. There was a statistical study in 2007 by Ministry of Women and Child Welfare, which said that boys are more susceptible. 54% of boys and 51% of girls whom they had interviewed were susceptible to child sexual abuse. So boys were more susceptible to that, and that's also because of the fact that लड़के को क्या करना है, लड़के को तो protect करना है. Boy has to go and protect, girl has to be the one who is protected, you know. So how can the boy, and again patriarchy plays a role over here, how can the boy come and say that, you know what, I was raped? Because he would be told, but
Yeah.
I was told that, hey, why didn't you beat him up? Aren't you a boy? You should have beaten him up. But if it's a girl,
No.
it's more like, नहीं नहीं नहीं, अरे तुम गर्ल को तो अंदर जेल में डाल दो. Like, don't go out after 5 o'clock, don't go and meet anybody because you could get sexually abused. So it's assumed that a woman would always be a victim, and that's why she needs to be jailed all the time, and there needs to be controls on her, and the boy would always be the assaulter. So even if something wrong happens to him, he has to protect himself. He'll not come for your protection. So and other genders, we don't speak about it all. We still speak only from a
Yeah.
binary standpoint. We don't
Yeah,
speak
yeah.
about people
The
or
non, yeah.
gender people. We don't.
I'm so
So
sorry to hear that. I didn't know, but it's so amazing that you're talking about this. But like you
Yeah.
said,
Also,
right, like how it's also like both genders, I feel like it's also and it shouldn't be, but it's also like a sexual preference thing. Like I mean, I have had experiences where I've gone to like queer bars or like places where I'm an ally and I'm an out and out ally, I'm even maybe bi, etc. But just entering that space, it's so strange to hear my straight privileged male friends feel weird about going to a gay bar. I would make fun of them because I would be like, can you just please relax? Like, you guys have literally ruled the world. Can we just please let them have a hurrah? Like, what's wrong with you? Let's go celebrate this. But I have seen firsthand that just because you're in a gay bar means that any man can go for any man. And, I've literally seen like groping happen in front of me. And I feel like you put yourself in those situations and you just understand how much more this is beyond just the regular female being victimized or female going through this. Men go through it. Straight men, the ones who rule this world, they go through it too. um just like in almost as traumatic ways, and it's hard to like measure that as women do, as even gay
yeah.
people do, right? Like in a place which is supposed to be safe for you, but people just kind of, I think, are
no,
not
no, but
educated enough in how to ask for, like, may I take you for a dance? Like, may I
Yeah.
don't know, sit on you, not just come and do that. It's a little
hmm,
strange.
Also,
yeah,
this entire thing, the way patriarchy plays a huge role in it. You know how generally, when it comes to straight people, and when they have to say something, for example, a woman who's speaking about her abuse, generally they don't care about the men getting raped. But the only time it comes up, it is like, what about the men getting raped? And I'm like, I never said they don't.
But
I was talking about my own experience. Why are you getting
I think
offended by that?
Those
I think it's
sentences
so
that
wrong.
start with "what about" are just automatically just throw them out the door.
Mhm.
Cancel
But
those.
Yeah.
I think what all men exist. Yes, all men. Yes, all men. What was the thing?
Yeah, something like
There was
that.
this whole there was this whole thing. Every time you speak about women, I mean, you can be sensitive towards men and other genders, even without using it as a green card to actually put down a woman.
Yeah.
Feminism is about equality and equity before equality. That's what feminism is about. Feminism is not misandry that people try to make it out. If you are
Yeah,
standing up for men who get abused, you're still a feminist. That's why you're standing up for men who get abused too. So that's something that people need to understand, and which gets misunderstood, and many people use it as a retort. It doesn't need to be a retort. It's a serious thing that happens with men also. You don't need to use that to cull the women's rights movement, or to say something like that. Yeah.
So that was actually a wonderful discussion. I think I had this personal interest in taking part in this. And we're really lucky and glad to have you both, Aisha and Harish, because both of you both have a different perspective. You both have had a different life, different orientation, literally different everything. So it was really nice to have you guys. And I think we should do this sometime again.
We should. We should. Mhm.
definitely. So happy
Thank
you
you.
made this happen. Thank you so much, Harish.
Thank you.
Especially, it's been
So
a
we'll
treat.
do.
I've been a
Oh,
fan.
Durex. I've got Durex. I've got Durex. I've got
Yay!
Durex at home.
Yes, the sponsor.
Sponsor
Thank
happy,
you so much,
sponsor
guys.
happy. Bye.
All right. Thank you so much,
Great. Thank you so
guys.
much, guys.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
That was a very insightful conversation. Thank you, Harish. Thank you, Parthi. Thank you, Aisha, for sharing your experiences. I think conversations about consent and abuse are so little, and even when they are there, they're incomplete or misunderstood. However, moving on to our next panel, we have our very own Nina Kler talking about another very important issue. I'm going to leave it to Nina to introduce the panel and the panelists. Over to you, Nina.
Thank you so much, Medha, and thank you for making this event happen. It wouldn't have happened without you. The framework that you put together, the sleepless nights that we've spent together making this happen, it's been such a journey, really. But I am silenced, to be honest, without exaggerating, listening to the previous panel, because one doesn't think of the power and position as a parent, right? So when I'm thinking of my parenting style, and I'm wondering, am I abusing my child if I'm pushing her too much? I mean, this has been a really big push for me to look within myself also. I feel going beyond the sexual aspect of abuse. Even as a parent, one can abuse, right? So thank you so much, Harish, Partvi, and Ayesha, for being part of our event. And now our next and final panel for the day before we move on for our performances is about how parents can bridge the gap in sexuality. There are so many unanswered questions, and I have two fabulous ladies joining me today. I have with me Niyati Shah, who is a sexuality educator, intimacy coach, counselor, and author. And I have with me Swati Jagdish, aka Maya's Amma, Instagram influencer, lactation consultant, and psychologist. Look at that, a mouthful, both of you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Such a
Thank you for inviting.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here with you, Swati.
Yeah, you too, Niyati.
So I think before we take off, I'd want to ask, maybe Swati, you first, a little bit about your journey and how did you get here in this space?
Okay, so I was into training and development before having my child. After giving birth to my daughter, I was part of some mother-to-mother support group in our city. So a bunch of us used to meet each other regularly, and then we used to talk about our breastfeeding concerns, postpartum stress, about starting solids for our children, about using baby carriers, about transitioning to cloth diapers instead of the disposable ones, using menstrual cups, practicing gentle parenting. So all these things we used to discuss with each other, and this group sort of grew from a support group into an NGO. And then 5 mothers, we run the show till now. It's been 7 years of this journey. In that journey, I got into lactation counseling as a profession because our city didn't have a lactation consultant at the time. And being a lactation consultant and also managing this support group and this NGO, I got to know that there's very little information with regard to sex and sexuality, because whenever we talk about breastfeeding awareness and breastfeeding campaigns, we used to see the difficulty that people have in talking about these things. For example, if we had to do a breastfeeding awareness campaign in a mall and we go and talk to the mall authorities, they're like, breastfeeding awareness here, why, what's the need? So a topic as simple and beautiful and divine as breastfeeding itself is considered taboo, means no point thinking and talking about sex. So these little things that I came to know in that journey of handling the support group and the NGO and talking about menstruation and menstrual cups and all that, I realized that there is a lack of understanding of human sexuality. So I thought I'll guide parents, because we were a parenting group. So we had a lot of parents who had a lot of questions and problems. So they were reaching out to us, the people who were managing the group. So I wanted to be that resource person who could help them when it comes to children asking uncomfortable questions, preventing sexual abuse and stuff like that. That's how I came into sex education.
And look at the community that you've created. I mean, it's insane. You have such a wonderful following, and the content you create is so relatable. It's wonderful. I love how your daughter's part of everything. It's just like she's there, she's absorbing. Wonderful. Thank you, Swati. Thank you for the work that you do. Niyati, I'd love to hear your story, please.
So I'm so happy to hear Swati's journey, that it began with a group of parents who were inquisitive and who were curious to talk about it, and they were talking about it. In my time, this is almost 18 years back, when I had my first child, it was as if nobody speaks about it. I did not even know there is something called sex education. In fact, I got to know about it when my son was about 6 years of age, and a doctor came to talk about it in his school. And I was like, what is this? I've been reading books, I've been talking to mentors, but it's all about parenting. Nobody, even in parenting, nobody spoke about sex education. So that's how I became curious to know, and I learned it from the doctor himself. And I said, okay, I need to know this because it's such an important part of growing up. So being an aware parent, wanting to be somebody who can parent their child in today's times, not from what I learned from my mother. So in that quest, I went to learn about it, and I realized nobody is talking about this. And another thing that dawned on me was I was abused as a kid. Then how did I not think about educating my child about it also? So I think the combination of these two experiences got me into learning more about it, then dwelled more upon that topic. And it's been 10 years now. I've been then started speaking to other parents who were ready to at least listen, like what is sex education. We are not only talking about safety, we're talking about regularizing this topic where you can talk to your children not only when they are young but even when they get older. And there are so many topics to talk about, and if parents can't be the trusted resource, then who can? And especially for a topic like this. So that's how my journey began with sex education.
Yet I'm curious to know that when you started this 10 years ago, there was barely anybody talking, if at all.
No.
So, what was the
Yes.
reaction like? What did people think or say to you?
So fortunately, I did have smaller groups of people because that time the only topic that was going on was safe and unsafe touch. They were still
Uh-huh.
not ready to talk about the deeper topics. But this, and also there were a lot of cases in the newspapers which had started surfacing because of the incidences in the schools. So with that fear, with those news, I think the parents were like, at least talk to our children and let them know what to do if something happens in the school. So that's where
Mhm.
the doors opened for me. And those parents then started keeping in touch to see that, okay, now my kids are growing. Now what do I tell them? Now they are getting periods. Now my son is asking for to shave. Now what to do? Now what? And that's how my journey began, with that same batch of parents who
Uh-huh.
graduated with me. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Happy to hear that.
Yes.
Okay, then we'll jump right in now. So, Swati, my first question to you, if you could unmute yourself. So,
Yeah.
how should parents approach the conversation around sex with their children?
Okay. So, first, I want parents to know that it's not only about sex. There are a lot of subjects in the umbrella term called sex education. So that's why we call it sexuality health education, because sex education is quite misunderstanding. A lot of people think it's directly or mostly about sex. So first, I list out all the topics that come under the subject called sexuality health education. That sort of opens everybody's eyes and brains towards the subject, because they all have their preconceived notions and biases that sex education is mostly about sex. But when I list out all the subjects that come under the title sexuality health education, they are all very happy to start off. So I think that's the first thing that we need to do. We need to let them know what the subject is all about. And
Mhm.
how to start? Well, I think just like eating habits, just like personal hygiene, every single day there will be something or the other happening around body parts, private parts, or any bodily activity like pregnancy or childbirth or periods or anything. So every day, if we notice very keenly, if we are conscious about this concept, we will find something to talk about. For example, just 3 4 days back, we were watching Encanto for the 500th time, probably, ever since it's released. And my daughter asked me, Amma, is it possible to have three children at the same time? Because in Encanto, the grandmother character has three kids at the same time. So then I told her, yeah, it's called triplets. So we had a conversation about it. We had a conversation about uterus. We had a conversation about uterus being strong enough to hold so many babies in it sometimes. So every single day, there'll be something or the other happening. So sex education is not waiting for your child to be a certain age and then you making the child sit in front of you and then you
Mhm.
giving them a lecture or a GAN about a certain topic. It is an everyday occurrence. So that's what I want parents to know.
Wow. You know something? I saw it in the movies, right? Growing up, watching movies from Hollywood and whatever, that there's a time when the parents sit down and talk about the birds and the bees. My mother never had it with me. I think she might have had it with my older sister, but I remember I lived in Bahrain growing up, and I was by the poolside, and my sister was 4 years older, and she was with a friend, and they were doing some kusar pusar, something period, and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" They're like, "Shh, it means time, it means time," and I was just like, "Come on!" And then I pushed them, and I was, I think, 9 years old, and they said it's, and it is what it is, right? But I think it's so wonderful that you're saying it should be part of our daily life and a daily occurrence. And but it's difficult, Swati. It's difficult, isn't it? I mean, you're a psychologist, so you're in tune, right? I think taking a step back, how does one even get in tune with that? How do you get in tune with
No.
your children to be able to,
No, no,
you
there,
know?
there is no advantage of me being a
No.
psychologist. At the end of the day, we are all shy people because we come from a generation that never spoke about all these things. So fundamentally, we are all the same. It's just that because I was into a breastfeeding awareness group and we were
Uh-huh.
talking very openly about breasts and breastfeeding and pregnancy and childbirth and parenting and all. I was I had my icebreaker
Ah,
moments in those
uh-huh.
support groups and whenever I had conversations about it. So it was slightly easy. But otherwise, I also had a lot of inhibitions. I had never heard the word vulva in my life ever. I thought it was vagina. So in my 30s, I came to know it suddenly it is called vulva. So for me also, it was a new concept. It's just that we were a bunch of mothers who were very confident to talk about breasts and breastfeeding. I think that paved the way to talk about these other subjects easily.
I love the way you say vulva with so much stress. It's wonderful. It's like full passion, vulva power. But Swati, when I came to India for the first time with my daughter, she was 4 months old, and I went to one of these Saket malls, and I was so impressed to see a lactation room, nice, clean, beautiful curtain, sliding door, all of that. It was wonderful. I hadn't even expected to see it, but it's wonderful to see now years ahead the kind of work that people like you and Niyati are doing. So, Niyati, most parents are, and I've seen this, I'm not exaggerating. This is not a made up question. This is a full experience, right? So, that most parents are very afraid of sexuality education, almost as if a sexual demon will get unleashed. God forbid you start this conversation, तुम उसको सिखा रहे हो. So,
Yes.
what do you say to them? तुम सिखा रहे हो. क्या बोलोगे?
So I remember this one time where I was about to just start with my puberty session, and it was boys and girls together. So there was this bunch of very forward mothers who were like, yes, yes, we want our children to know. And just before I was starting, they came to me and told me, but don't talk about sex, okay? And I was like, 1 minute. Just at the beginning of the session, if you're going to tell me something like this, one, it's not okay. Two, if a child asks me a question, I will reply. It's a puberty session. We will not be talking about sex as such, but because we're talking about the uterus, we're talking about the eggs and the sperms, and it's a very normal question where a child will say, how did that sperm reach the egg? So that is where, if this question comes, I will have to answer. There is no, going back on that. So I do understand your question, and it is also being thrown to me by my own friends who say, हम भी तो बाप बने हैं, दो दो बच्चों के बाप बने हैं, किसी को ये बात करने की जरूरत नहीं है. So this is this is the reality, but in from the other perspective, all right, from the parents who feel like that. So this is how I humor myself. So I wonder, like, okay, because I have a sweet tooth, if somebody tells me, there's a new dessert shop that's open, wouldn't I want to go there? Wouldn't I want to be there and savor that, flavors? So similarly, I think somewhere the parents feel, because the teenagers are in that kind of a age where their development is, the hormones are at their peak. So at that time, if you're going to talk to your children about sex, they are going to go and do it, because that's what they're waiting for any which ways. वैसे भी बच्चे सुनते नहीं हैं, फिर तुम, you're going ahead and telling them this, obviously they're going to try it out. But what these parents don't understand is, when you talk to your child about sex or anything around sex, one, you have to treat it like a science, you have to treat it like a life skill. You do not, so there are some parents who become very happy to share their own story. I had 3 girlfriends when I was in college. So now you are putting a pleasure in the talk that you're giving your child. So what is the child going to listen? Oh, that's a good thing to have. I'm going to have 3 girlfriends and boyfriends when I am in college. So it all depends on how you treat the topic and you are teaching your child. So treat it as science, treat it as a life skill, treat it as how you would teach them to make dosa or how you would teach them to tie a shoelace. So when the right time comes in, whether they question you, whether they are commenting on something, whether they will be going through some sexual developments just before that. So there are these
Mm-hmm.
times when you decide how and what to talk to your child. And
All
then
right.
when your child learns,
Uh-huh.
supposing about sex, supposing about intercourse, but then you are not only finishing with the definition and leaving the talk. At some place, you tell them what the consequences are if you do it at a wrong time or with the wrong person, or what can happen even if it is the right person or at the right time. What are the consequences?
Sure.
How easy it is to get pregnant, even if there is a contraceptive in place. When you talk to your child about all of this, they get it. They get it. Children are way smarter than what we assume them to be. They are way smarter. So when you tell them that it can be risky, there is a chance of diseases or pregnancy or breaking a heart or emotional connect, what happens when two people come together? When you start talking about it in simple language, as much as they can take it, I think they get
Mm-hmm.
it. I think, no, I know they get it because I talk to them. They understand that there is a risk. They understand that
Uh-huh.
there is there is there is something that I need to take care of and just not go for it. So I think
Sure.
that is where the parents need to understand. It's not, and as Swati said, it's not only
Uh-huh.
about sexual intercourse. It's so much more that you talk about. You know,
Yeah.
when you're talking about sex education, you're talking about a toxic relationship, you're talking about what happens, when they come together. What are these hormones? How do you feel sexual? What can you do if you do not want to indulge in a sexual intercourse with somebody? Introduce masturbation to them. So there's a lot that you need to talk about, and not just the act of sex. When parents
Sure.
understand that, then it will
Uh-huh.
become a smooth journey for them.
Wonderful, Niyati. Thank you for sharing that. Swati, what are your thoughts on this when a parent talks like this and they say, oh my God, it'll unleash a demon? What do you say to them?
Okay. According to me, I think we didn't know anything about it. That's why we just wanted to go to it. If you get to know all the A to Z of the topic, no, you get too overwhelmed with all the information. You just don't want to do it. Right. So
Exactly. Yeah.
education and empowerment does not work that way. If, for example, if a person wants to know about why they are having inflammation, or why they are getting all these diseases related to inflammation, if they want to reduce inflammation in their body, and if I go and tell them that dairy products and gluten are inflammatory, it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that they are going to drink liters and liters of milk afterwards, or then eat a lot of chapati afterwards. Every time they drink a cup of milk, they're going to think about it. Every
Sure.
time they eat a piece of chapati, they're going to think about it. Oh my goodness, Swati told it's both inflammatory. Oh, is this why I'm getting constipation? Is it why I'm getting bloating? Should I reduce? Should I go for some alternative? So education and empowerment does not work that way. You tell them something or give them some information, they're going to jump and do it. No, that's not how it works. They're going to be double, triple cautious about what they're going to do. So, first of all, parents have to know how empowerment works. When you give them information, they are going to be careful about it. They're going to think about it. They're going to think about the consequences. They will research about it. At least when they kiss or when they hug, or when for example, when teenagers become sexually active at one point, uh, something will hold them back. Is it okay? Is it maybe next time, or maybe I'm not ready? They will ask themselves whether they are ready. So yeah, parents have to know that just talking about a subject will not make kids or teenagers run and have sex. Yeah.
I'm so happy to
And
hear that. I think we're going to take this clip out there and put it on our website also. It's really important because parents, so many parents I know who say this, that no, no, क्यों सिखा रहे हो? Seriously. Niyati, you wanted to say something?
No, no, I was agreeing with what Swati was saying, that just because they know something, it does not mean that they will go and do it. It just
Mhm.
literally means now they're going to think from all angles. So, one thing about
Sure.
teenagers or even the tweens, in today's times, we have to understand physiology, how they work. So, they have a brain where in the frontal cortex, which takes care of the logic and the reasoning, is not yet developed and
Mm.
fully functioning. It's the feelings inside. So, if they are feeling sexual, they're going to hop on it and do what they need to. I mean, not obviously, not all the way, and not all children, on a general
Uh-huh.
platform that we're talking. But if you give them the logic and the reasoning, which they can't have by themselves, it stays with them. They know what they are doing. And sex education is not a one-time talk any which ways. You have to
Mhm.
repeat yourself. You have to talk about it again and again. You have to put in situations where you are having these talks with your children in different ways so that they learn the same thing again and again. So even exams, we need revision. So these topics, they
Yes.
better have more revisions than any other day, you know. So it does not work. I completely agree with Swati. It doesn't work like that. So if you teach something, they're going to be
Mhm.
more aware about it.
And I think it's wonderful that you pointed out about the brain because I was having a conversation with my therapist, I think 2 weeks ago. And she was saying, Nina, come on, you know better. You studied psychology as well. Like, you know better. Like, the brain is not developed to the point, and you expect
Yes.
her to be able to understand you. Like, come on, But I
Yeah.
think it's important for people to even know that. And,
Yes.
Niyati, you had mentioned the word masturbation before I came to this demon question. So I wanted to have your thoughts on, considering the fact that there's so much shame around masturbation, how does one normalize a conversation with one's children around this topic?
So, just like any other topic, Nina, as we both were discussing, one, you have to understand where the shame is coming from. If you understand the problem, that's where half the answers are solved. So, when you realize that, okay, actually, our country is a country that wrote Kama Sutra, the only country who studied sexuality like an art, like a science, you know, it's a topic that we understand way better than any part of the world. So, if that is who we were, where is all this shame coming from? The shame came from other cultures who came into our country and ruled over us. It's their culture
Mhm,
that they've brought here. So if you understand where this change happened, and it was okay, it still is okay. We have books, we have sculptures, we have sexuality all over our country, which speaks boldly about sexuality. So what is it making shameful for us? It's the other culture who brought in theirs. So going back to who we are, and it's okay to talk about sexual topics. Once you are okay talking about it, then you take it forward, understanding that, okay, my child is coming to an age where he or she may not talk to me about masturbation directly. That I want to start masturbating. Is there something I need to know? That may not happen. But you can sit down, create a situation, or bring the topic up with an older child and say, listen, there is something I also need to talk to you about. Just
mhm,
like other
mhm,
topics, this is one of the topic I would like to talk to you about. So, and tell them that this is what is happening to your body. So basically the first thing is education. Educating
mhm,
yourself before you educate your child, because we are educated by a different generation who gave us a lot of fear. They've put in a lot of fear in us. So when somebody wanted to control something, they either instilled fear of diseases or God. And these are the exactly two things that are going on with masturbation. You'll become blind, you'll not be able to father children later, Bhagwan, you're committing sins. So understanding that it is not like that. What is it? What are the experts saying? What are the doctors saying? What is masturbation? What do I need to know as a parent to then instill all this education to my child? So first educate yourself, then educate your
uh-huh,
child. Second, so everything about masturbation, what it means, what it involves, about the hygiene, about the safety. So masturbation is not only the act that you will explain to your child. You have to explain the responsibility, the privacy, as I said, the hygiene and the safety of masturbation, around masturbation. Second thing is your comfort. If I am going to hesitate to talk about this topic to my child, and I'm going to like, but little, and I'm looking down, I'm not having the eye contact, I am not feeling comfortable. My child
mhm,
is not listening any which ways. My child is experiencing how I say it. So if I
sure.
am uncomfortable, my child is going to take it as an uncomfortable topic. So when
Mhm,
I'm
mhm,
comfortable and talking to you, just like any other topic, they are going to take it that way. They understand that it's a normal thing to talk about. So your
mhm,
comfort is
mhm,
extremely important. Your honesty is very important as a parent. So if a child asks you a question, don't beat around the bush. Give them the honest answers. Keep it short, keep it as much as they need to know or as much as they are asking for, but
mhm.
give right, honest answers. Do not lie to them. They are going to find out today or tomorrow, and you will become the untrusted resource of information. They won't come to you. So be honest with your children. Have patience. because you might have to repeat it again. They might
Yeah.
come up with very different questions that you've never thought of also. So be okay, be patient, go back to the answers to their questions, repeat if you have to tell them, question them sometimes that you remember, right, what I spoke to you about. I hope you're taking care of the hygiene. Someday ask
Uh-huh.
them, I hope you are being safe about it. So small sentences, go back to the topic again and again. And last but not the least, accept it. Accept things about and
Yeah.
topics about sexuality. Accept that masturbation is a very normal and it's okay to masturbate. It does not need the hype that society is also creating around it, but it doesn't need the shame that we already are carrying on our shoulders since all these years. It's just another thing that we need to know about ourselves, because masturbation has its own pros and its
Mhm,
own cons. Cons is only if you're addicted to it. Otherwise, there is no other issue with masturbation,
mhm,
or if you're not safe about it. But
mhm,
telling them how to release themselves when need to be. So imagine this: if I have a son who's, very, very sexually maybe aroused, and rather than him looking for a partner, if he knows he can masturbate and relax himself, it's a better way of being that way, rather than all the other people who think that you have to force somebody to get them to have the
yeah.
intercourse. Or so rather than behaving in a harassment way or behaving in a bad way, I think masturbation becomes a lessons also about knowing ourselves, understanding ourselves, of who we are, how we like it, and to keeping it to ourselves and not involving and indulging into places and people that probably we don't need. So I think to understand everything around masturbation as a parent is more
Mhm.
important beforehand than to teach the child. So start with education and acceptance and comfort and honesty and patience. That's what I would say.
Niyati, did you hear the conversation that I had with Seema? And did you
No,
hear that? Okay, I will
no.
definitely share it with you because Seema is like the goddess of Kama Sutra, right?
Yes.
So I will share that with you. There were some parallels in my mind when you were talking. Because one of the questions I
Sure.
asked her was that what are the millennials doing wrong when it comes to sexuality? And I just loved her answer. I'm going to share that with you
Done.
right
Looking
after our
forward.
conversation. Yeah. Swati, gender fluidity is something that has always existed. But now the conversation is becoming more acceptable and I guess far more important, right? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I believe today's kids get to see wide variety of um, people, wide variety of TV shows, series,
Mhm,
international shows. So they are getting exposed to a lot of stuff that you might not otherwise see around you. So, for example, a gay couple, a movie about a gay couple. So these kind of things they are seeing on social media as well as on Netflix and all. Whereas we are not a culture or a community that would probably have a gay couple staying in your apartment. That is quite rare to happen. So they are getting the information, even if um, directly we don't get to have conversations. For example, if my brother was gay and he is bringing his partner home, I can easily have a conversation with my daughter. They both of them are they love each other. They are having a family with each other, so I can have that conversation. Now we need to have these conversations, considering they are going to they are living in another generation. That generation might have all this, so I need to prepare my child or my teenager to that generation. So we need to do a little bit of um, advanced proactive work these days, even if we don't get to see most things around us. Personally, I don't know anybody from the transgender community, but I have to talk about transgenders to my child. Like tomorrow, both of us will be sitting in our car in a traffic signal, and then a transgender person might walk to us asking for money. So we will anyway have to have the conversation someday.
mhm,
So might
mhm,
as well proactively have these conversations. So first thing parents have to do is parents have to get to know the gender spectrum. They have to get to know what is biological sex, what is gender identity, what is gender expression, what is sexual orientation. So if all these four things are clear to the parent, they will find avenues to talk about it. So this example that I just told you actually happened multiple times to us, to me and my daughter. When we were in traffic signals, we have come across transgender folks coming to us asking money, and we've had conversations with them. I have spoken about them to her after they leave. So all these things have happened. Or if we for example, accidentally, I was watching a romantic comedy, and then there was this gay marriage in it, and then she walks in and quickly looks at the screen, and then she sees this gay couple, and then she looks at it for a second, and then she asks, okay, only grooms are there, where is the bride? No brides, only grooms. So instead of telling her that both the brides are waiting somewhere else to marry these people, I just told her that they are a gay couple. They're the man and the man. They're getting married to each other. They love each other. And she was like, "Oh, is that possible?" I said, "Yeah." So then she thought for a second and she asked, "Which means, is it possible for two girls to get married to each other?" I said, "Yeah." And she again thought for a second and she said, "Okay, bye. I'm going to play. Bye. Over." So try to have conversations whenever possible. Try to not change the subject, and try to proactively introduce certain topics also, because as I told you, we might not get to see a gay couple around us. So if we can talk about it, do you know that two men can get married to each other? And see what they have to say about it. They might have something very interesting to say about it. They might not even make it a big deal. They might say, "Ah, yeah, fine, whoever, anybody can get married to anybody." They might just say. So I think before they develop all kinds of biases and stereotypes, if it's best to introduce these subjects to them before they develop the society's biases. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Swati, as you're saying this, I'm thinking, I recall my daughter goes to Sri Ram School, which is a really amazing school, and they have all these workshops in there. I think the first school in the country to talk about, mental health and have counselors in school, and so good that you don't even normally need to go out. And if you do need to go out, they are connected with even Children's First, which is the best setup for mental health for children in the country, I'd say, in Delhi. But I'm thinking as you're speaking that sex ed for children is one thing. You're talking gender spectrum. How many of us or my generation knows the entire gender spectrum? We're talking about children, good touch, bad touch. I remember all these, workshops in school. Parents were called, we were explained, whatever. But there was no conversation of gender spectrum. And I think it's so important. And I'm so happy that you're doing the work that you are. And so my understanding of sex ed is this, Swati, that you're teaching them about the act of sex. Now you're saying that you do sexuality education. Does pleasure also play part in that teaching, Swati? Do you talk about pleasure?
When time comes, we can talk about it. I don't think we need to start the conversation with pleasure. We can always start the conversation with the fact that sex is for baby making, and we can stick to that until a point in time where we get to know that the child is ready to understand, or the child has become a preteen or a teen. Now we need to introduce the next concept to them, and then we can gradually shift to the concept that sex is also an act that is done for pleasure. Because unless we talk about it, we won't be able to talk about concepts related to contraception or abortion. Because if sex is only for baby making, then why do we use contraception? Why are people getting abortions then? So we need to talk about the other angle also, but maybe at a later point of time, gradually. So this is like mathematics. You don't start with algebra and trigonometry and differentiation integration. Start with plus and minus, and then get to trigonometry at a later point of time.
Look at you remember all the subjects also. Good Lord, it's been so long for me. I've even forgotten integration. Oh my God, I'm getting like PTSD at this point, seriously. So thank you, Swati. Niyati, coming to you again. How do we teach our children equality? And I think Harish was talking about equality as well at some point, but I'd like your thoughts on how we can teach our children equality.
So this is a very interesting question. Lately, it has started coming even more often because everybody is working towards equality, right? So one thing we really have to drill this in our mind is we can't teach equality. We have to be equal. Only if children learned everything we taught them, we would have had the best kids, ever. But children watch us, and that's how they learn. children
Mhm.
just repeat of what we are doing. So when we
Neti,
are
can you hold your
respectful,
wire like this? Can you hold the mic? Yeah, because it's
yes, is this better? Is
much
this
better.
better?
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
we don't teach equality. We become those adults who believe in equality, whose acts and behavior show equality. That's where children learn about equality. So, as I was saying, if our children learned everything we taught them, they would have been the best kids ever, right? But children don't learn by listening, they learn by watching us. So when we are equal towards our children or towards the society, that's how it's normal for them. That's how we're supposed to be. Of course, there will be other influences in their life, like schools or neighbors or teachers, tuitions or friends' homes, but they will always take reference from home. Like my
Mm-hmm.
mom said that even I can play with cars and my brother can play with dolls. Why did this auntie say it like that? So they will always come back home to question, like, why did this happen? So I think the first thing is, don't wonder how to teach equality. Just become that person who's equal to all genders. Now, here again, I remember Harish saying that we only speak about he and she, and we don't speak about the others. But be respectful to everyone. So now how can you do this? One thing we need to realize, we categorize our children as soon as they are born. One, by
Mm-hmm.
giving them the sex, the label of their sex, then their gender, because if they are born as a girl, like with a vulva, then she's a girl, a female. And if they are born with a penis, they are a male. That's how we categorize them. And we're confused between sex and gender. So one, understand that it's different. Even a girl can be have the characteristics of a masculine person, or the other way around. So one is that. Second, whether it's colors, whether it's toys, whether it's anything, we have chosen for our children as soon as they are born. We tell them what to play with, we tell them what colors to wear, we tell them which bathroom to use, we tell them everything. So children are actually not as biased as we think, or we are making it to be. One. So now how to have this? One, educate yourself, as I said earlier also. Tell your children that it's okay to be who you are or what you want to do. So treat them equally in the house and outside. So for examples, give the toys your children want to play with. Not you. So if you are in a toy shop and your daughter says, I want that gun, don't say that's for boys, you go pick a doll.
Mm-hmm.
That's not for you. Or if the boy says, I want a doll, ladka, okay, you'll play with a doll, no, pick something else. So don't do
Mm-hmm.
that. Allow them to take whatever they want or buy whatever they want or wear any colors they feel like. So if my son says that I want to wear a pink t-shirt, I should not stop him from doing that. Even if he says that he wants a pink bag along with it. So that's his choice. So that's how I teach him to be okay and equal. You can be and you can use these things. So my
Yeah.
daughter, there now for school, now when I'm talking about even outside schools, this is something that I personally believe in. You should not have different bathrooms or toilets in the school. In fact, this is a place where you can teach them how to work with one another, how to respect one another's privacy, or how to have those etiquettes even in the bathroom. And be understand, because when a child starts learning about one another when they are
Mm-hmm.
children, by the
Yeah.
time they are into relationships, they are ready for the person who's coming into their lives. They only have to work the relationship, not figure out everything about a person. So that's one way of teaching from the school perspective. They should have co-education schools, which is becoming an increasing setup. But at the same times, they should not have particular rows for boys and girls. If it is a co-ed school, allow them to mingle with one another, allow them to sit next to one another,
Mm-hmm.
involve them into projects and activities where they are all
Mm-hmm.
together. So this is another way of doing it. Now this is happening a lot in the urban schools, but we
Uh-huh.
are a big rural area, right? So that is
Yes.
that is also somewhere where this should happen. um, I think now, looking at older children, allow your daughters to roam around freely on the streets as your son would. Don't say तुम लड़की हो तुमको 9 बजे घर आ जाना है. Don't come back. You'll have to come back at 9 o'clock because you're a girl, and your
Yeah.
brother can be out in the streets because he's a boy. Teach your son how to be with a girl, even if she's outside, and teach your daughter how to protect herself, just as you would have taught your son. So
Protect herself. I think that's so important. So
teach
important.
both of them how to be on the road safely, teach
Hmm.
both of them how to respect somebody who's on the road, and let
Yeah.
them be safe around it. So teach both. So this is how you teach equality. Don't forget about teaching the consent to them. And when we are
Of course.
talking about
Yeah.
consent is a whole different topic. Teach your
Yeah.
son to cook and your daughters how to invest. This is how you teach equality. This is how you tell them you can be dependent on your partner, but at the same
Hmm.
time you have to be independent, and you need to know your chores, whether you're a girl or a boy. So the life skills have to be in place no matter what the gender or the sex is. So these small actions in an everyday life is where your child will learn equality,
Hmm.
not through books, not through lectures. It's
Uh-huh.
only through our actions. So I
Yeah.
know it's a little longer, but I think it was important to bring out
Absolutely.
these small
Yeah.
examples.
No, wonderful. We have 5 minutes to go, and I definitely want, Swati, before we wrap up, for you to talk about the policing angle, right? And I think this question goes beyond what I had set out to ask you. I was going to ask you that, what are your thoughts on policing of content on TV? What are your thoughts on policing in general when it comes to, sexual consumption, you know, whether it's
Okay.
internet, whether it's TV, whatever, policing, not policing, what do I do? That's an often asked question. Me too. So,
Yeah. So um, for me, I'm not a big fan of policing anything.
uh-huh.
I'm a big fan of trying to balance whatever you're trying to do, and that is what is very difficult as a parent, because you can't completely, uh, you cannot completely take away all kind of content that the child will be exposed to. At the same time, you can't keep giving them all content freely also. So, according to me, because I deal with parents with very little children, we ask them very strictly in our parenting support group to not show any screens until they turn 2. So, no
Mhm.
screen time till 2. And even after 2, age appropriate content, definitely they can watch. But restrict that time, have a very strict time period in which they can watch that content. And keep on checking what they are watching. Is it downloaded apps that they are watching, or is there a lock on those apps? So those kind of things parents have to keep monitoring. Now as they grow, because schooling itself is online, and they get a lot of assignments and projects to do, for which they'll have to do a lot of research.
Mhm.
Statistics say that between the ages of 8 and 10, children are coming across pornographic content. So either they wantedly go see, or they accidentally come across a lot of content. Maybe they search for best and then they get breast,
Mhm.
things like that. So parents have to be proactive. Like
Mhm.
Nidhi said, it's a continuous, consistent conversation that we have at home. So a child that is using phone, us looking into the phone and then asking, what are you watching? Can I also watch with you for some time? Show that you're also interested in their content, even if it's boring as hell. Watch for some time, talk about it. And then as they grow, also tell them that you might come across naked adult bodies sometimes, and you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to get scared. You'll never get in trouble if you come across something like that. You can always come and talk to amma or appa, and then we'll talk about what you saw. You just have to come and tell us what you saw, and then you can just switch it off. It's not content for children, it's content for adults. It's called porn or pornography. It's just people making babies or naked adult bodies rubbing against each other. So there's no problem in you watching it, but then you're not supposed to keep on watching it. So if you come
Mhm.
across it, you don't have to hide it. You can just come and talk to me. We'll talk about it. So make it a very casual conversation. Make sure that the child understands that I might come across something, but then I don't have to keep on watching it. Or I can always go and have a conversation with Amma or Appa about it. So make things as casual, open, free as possible at home. And a lot of teenagers' parents reach out to people like me asking, how do I talk about porn? My first question will be, have you spoken about sex? And they're like, no. So without speaking about sex, how are you going to talk about porn? So you will have to finish off with these basics. Only after finishing ABCD, we can talk about JHIJK. So you finish off with these basics, and then you can get into the next stage of conversation. So sex is the core subject. All other subjects revolve around it like planets. So finish off with sex before the child develops embarrassment, biases, taboo, shame, etc. around the subject. So talking about other topics related to it becomes very easy for you.
So, Swati, but what are your thoughts on installing Net Nanny on the laptop without telling? What are your
Without
thoughts
tell,
on that?
without telling,
Without
I'm not a
telling.
fan. Without telling, I'm not a fan. I believe we need to be open about these things. Every family has to have a media rule. After 10:30 or 11, people won't use internet here, or the Wi-Fi will be switched off. Nobody can use afterwards, and we also have to follow. Switch off the Wi-Fi in the child's room, and then if we are sitting and watching Netflix, then that won't work. So as Niyati said, again, children are constantly observing the parent. Just yesterday, my daughter, after she came from the park, my husband asked her, "Okay, come, let's take a bath." She was like, "Play Encanto songs, and then I'll take bath." And my husband was like, "What is this new behavior?" No, Amma was playing music when she was taking bath.
There you go. There you go.
So they are
Modeling.
constantly observing us. We don't have to teach them anything. If
Yes.
we want our children to be confident, we have to be confident. If they want our children to be safe, we have to teach them about safety, talk about safety. So it's just whatever we do.
Wonderful. I mean, it's really it's nice to hear all of this, to learn about all of this. But as a parent, I can tell you, it's just like one feels that to model all of this, you have to work so much on yourself, and I think it's a responsibility. And that's so. I keep telling my therapist, I said, sometimes I wonder that I keep coming to you over and over, not only to feel better about myself, because she's watching me. So I really appreciate both of you taking the time. And Swati, I know you haven't been well, so thank you. And Niyati, thank you too for taking the time. It's been so wonderful meeting both of you and having this
Thank you,
conversation.
Nina. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you
the
so much.
opportunity. Thank you,
Thank
Yeah,
Niyati.
you.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Swati. Thank you.
Medha, I'm so looking forward to the next segment. So I'm going to hand the mic back to you.
Hi, Nina. Thank you so much. This was, I think, a wonderful conversation, a really interesting one, and especially because I'm a sexuality educator myself. So much to take from here. Thank you, and I hope all the parents out there were also listening to to this conversation. Now we're going to move on to another really interesting part of our event. We have Jigyasa Labru and Taranjeet Kaur with a short piece of poetry for us. So we're going to first invite Taranjeet Kaur. She is, hi Taranjeet, just quickly going to introduce you. She's an Indian actress and poet known for her Oscar-winning German film Raju. She's worked in many award-winning films like Aankho Dekhi and Mouth of Hell, a BAFTA-nominated film. She is a spoken word artist whose poems revolve around women's issues. Her first poem, I Am Not a Virgin, on YouTube got more than 4.5 million views and a huge response. She's a co-founder of Pad Squad, an initiative started during the lockdown that works on menstrual hygiene of women. I'm going to hand it over to you, Taranjeet. Thank you so much for joining us. You are on mute, Taranjeet. We can't hear you. Perfect. Yeah.
Hi, Veda. Good evening, everyone. It's been wonderful attending all the sessions, and I must congratulate Nina, Meda, and everybody involved in this initiative, because we are starting conversations on some really important issues. And it was lovely listening to Swati and Niyati and Nina, and amazing to hear them talk about parenting and sex education. In fact, one of my next pieces that's going to be released on YouTube is on sex education, and how, as parents, we must talk about different things, starting from good touch, bad touch, to consent. And it's lovely listening to Swati, how both of them explained, like, talking about gender fluidity, talking about masturbation, and just gradually having these conversations with your child, and the more you feel relaxed and you don't behave in an awkward fashion, the children themselves will be very relaxed and very open to talking to you about these things. Also, I enjoyed attending the session with Harish and Ayesha, and I think a very important topic that they spoke about, consent and abuse, has been my main focus of work as an artist. How it's really important to ask for consent, whether not only as far as a physical relationship is concerned, but even for small things. As Aisha said, if you're in a party and somebody wants to just click a picture, and it's really nice if someone asks for your permission. So, one of my first pieces, which I'm going to recite today, has been the most popular piece in terms of the response it got on YouTube and social media. It talks about the heading of the pieces, I'm not a virgin. It talks about the unnecessary stress that has been laid by the society expecting a woman to be virgin. And while we don't have any parameter to check a male's virginity, but there is a social stigma attached if you're not a virgin when you get married. So, starting with the first one. I remember as a young girl, I was told not to join sports that are too aggressive or to do anything that's too physical. I wondered why, but I broke the norms and I did them all. Jumping, skipping, sports, dancing, followed my heart and did everything that was my calling. But as I grew up, like all young girls, my parents found a match for me. And before I knew, they were putting Vatna on me. Not so that my skin glows on that day, but they thought that my brown skin might become a little whiter. I was given a red sari with sequins, as red is the color of passion. But the sequins still hurt. But you have to stay like that all through the day. And after an endless day of rituals, I left my home and entered his. And I was told that from today, this is your house and this is where you have to stay. As I sat there tired after a long day, the women pulled me and took me to his bedroom. They giggled as they pushed me in. The room smelled of rose petals spread all over the bed, and some strings hanging above my head from the ceiling. As I moved the petals to make some space to sit, I noticed the white sheets. White, sparkling white, not a dot on it, like they show in detergent ads. I sat there in anticipation when he would come. If he would make love or have sex was not my choice back then. He would come, undress, and once he's done, he would move his hands on the sheets as if he were inspecting. Maybe they like the touch of blood on their hands. But what if he found none? What if I did not bleed? If I'd lost my hymen to dance or sports or whatever, no one would ever know. And then the women would come back the next morning and their jaws would drop when they see the sheets as white as before. And then maybe they would wrap me up in the sheets and it would become my shroud. And then from my grave, I would scream. My voice would be heard, but my blood won't be seen. I sat there, looking at the sheets, reflecting. If they would have liked to put a lock on my hymen or to tie my feet so I never opened my legs. Maybe God must also have been a man, that he gave me a hymen and not to him. It's time to rewrite the history. So women don't need to prove their purity. Can I just call her Mary and not virgin? Can Sita stop proving her integrity? Can I stop before giving this virginity test? Because it's my body and I will do as I please. As I sat there wondering all this, the door opened. He entered. As I looked at the footsteps approaching me, I wondered if I could quickly get up and change the sheets. Thank you. This was I'm Not a Virgin, which of course revolves about the virginity test that women in many parts of the world still have to give when they get married. The second poem is very close to my heart. It's titled Love, Sex, Soprano. It talks about the journey of a woman who enters puberty. Like most of us, we are very excited to meet the man of our lives. We are exploring our body. We have our own physical desires. And then she meets the man of her life, and how her dreams are shattered, and then how she explores herself in this journey. And the poem broadly talks about consent. I was 13 when I first felt the flutter in my heart. The first time he looked at me, just the brush of our hands, just sitting on the next bench, was enough to get the hormones go crazy. The first night when I waited with bated breath for him to enter the room and love me through the night. You came, undressed, and fucked me. Every time I would wait to have a conversation that felt like love, the touch that would draw me closer to you. I would wait for someone to hold me in his arms, whisper sweet nothings before drawing me to ecstasy. But your ways were simpler. You would hold me tight night after night to pull my legs and thrust till you arrived. And I would scream but lay unsatiated. I would spend the rest of the night looking at the ceiling. Where was love in all this? Every time you turned your back after having the pleasure of my body, I would wonder, what about me? Did you ever think that I also needed to feel the pleasure that a woman feels when she is loved? And here I was, empty, unfulfilled, unsatiated. Till a few days ago, when I looked into the mirror and smiled at this woman who laughed at me. When did you stop loving yourself? Your love for life, your spirit to fly and never say die. I lay in bed touching every single pore of me. The arms that held me tight to comfort me. The hands that loved the roundness of my breast that could feed and nourish. My feet entangling in each other till the wetness of my being reached a high, leaving me happy and loved. I could say with pride, I love myself, my dear. And I could satiate myself and make love to me. For I'm done with you and I'm happy as one can be. Thank you. This was Love, Sex, Soprano, which broadly talks about consent, about self-love, discovery of a woman where it can actually be any gender. It is gender fluid. Discovering your self-worth and not giving in to any kind of destructive relationships. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Meena. Thank you, Mesh Foundation. Thank you, Quint, for having me. It's been a pleasure performing for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Taranjeet. That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing and thank you for doing the work that you do. Now we're going to have Jigyasa Lavru from Slam Out Loud. We're just waiting for her to join us backstage. Okay, in the meantime, I'm going to introduce Jigyasa. Jigyasa is the co-founder and CEO of Slam Out Loud. a for mission non-profit that uses transformative power of performance and visual arts to build creative confidence in disadvantaged children. Slam Out Loud currently reaches 50,000 children across 4 states in India. Through their response to COVID, has been able to create a footprint in 19 countries, reaching 4.7 million children. Currently, Jigyasa is a K.C. Mahindra Scholar at Howard University and the 2020 winner of Falling Walls Berlin. She deeply believes in the power of finding one's own voice and engages with music and travel to constantly evolve herself. Thank you for joining us at this really odd hour, Jigyasa. I know all the glitches that we've gone through and how we've got you here. So thank you so much for joining us. Over to
Of
you.
course, of course. Hi, Meta. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for the intro. Um, okay, now I'm in the spotlight. So initially, I thought of a spoken word poem, but given the hour that I have here, I have a small poem that I'm reading, which is by Mary Oliver, and the poem is a little bit about expression. It's also a little bit about how we see ourselves in the scheme of things when it comes to expressing the expectations that we have of ourselves. And before I started off, of course, Meda shared a little bit about our work. I think the way it relates to expression or sexuality or really becoming who we are is that for children who don't have safe spaces, um, to talk about what they want to talk about what matters to them, to express how they feel. It's very difficult to create a world of empowered adults who understand consent. Difficult to create a world of empowered adults who understand what it means to be able to empathize, to have their own voice, and to be able to listen to another person's voice. And that's one of the reasons we do what we do at Slam Out Loud. We create spaces so that children can really learn what it means for them to have a voice and to really take a stand for themselves. So I go ahead with this poem. It's called Wild Geese. It's a wildly popular poem by Mary Oliver. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert, repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese high in the clean blue air are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls you to like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. I think that is all from me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jigyasa. Thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful. Thank you for joining us as well. Again, we woke you up really early to get you here. And I think this was a wonderful way to also end the event. So, great. Wonderful. So now, before I invite Ashish Birki, the founder and CEO of Match Project Foundation, to close this event, I would like to invite Nina Kler, founder of Pursuit of Balance, our co-presenter, to say a few words. Over to you, Nina.
Thank you, Medha. First of all, thank you, Jigyasa, for waking up at this unearthly hour and honoring the invitation. Really, really appreciate it. And Taranji, thank you for not only performing right now, but for the wonderful work that you're doing at Pad Squad. I think it's amazing what you've done through the entire COVID situation. And I think we should definitely talk more about your work the next time we do something. So, so I just wanted to say, these 5 days have been amazing. I have learned so much about this area, which I didn't have enough knowledge about. it's been a real learning, and I would say on a personal note, it's been an insane journey. The last 5 days, I've learned so much about myself, about my ecosystem, how well loved and supported I am, and above all, I think it has reinstated what I really believe in and what matters to me. And I think breaking the wall goes beyond sexuality, revolution, and collaborations for me. It means breaking every wall over and over that comes between me and my truth, right? So I think this event forced me to think about what my truth is, what I stand for. So it's been such a wonderful gift. And so my message for the youth watching this is keep breaking the wall. And this would not have been possible without the wonderful team that Ashish has created at MASH. Each and every single person on that team has worked their backsides off for this event to make it happen in such a short time. And I appreciate Ashish doing this with me and all the partners who've come on board. And especially, I want to give a special thanks to Quint because you have shared every single thing that we put out there and you've helped us amplify the work that we have slaved over the last 5 days. And really, I mean, yeah, we put our heart and soul in this. And yes, so I'm going to hand the mic over to Ashish Birgi, whose initial baby this was, and he allowed me to foster it with him. So, Ashish, over to you. And we will fight later. So,
No, absolutely. Thank you, Nina. I think it's been a real pleasure working with you. And to all our wonderful speakers who joined us, and thank you, Jigyasa. I know how difficult it's sometimes to get up. That shows your commitment towards initiatives like Break the Wall and also the constant support and partnership. And that I would also like to sum up that last 5 days has been such an action-packed, insightful. There were conversations which some of us have never heard of, but this initiative is a step towards creating these walls that we've created ourselves, and to facilitate an ecosystem that allows more and more young people to come out and talk about it. And young people need support from everybody. When we hear from our peers, our teachers, our parents, and every other aspect, every stakeholders who shape up our ideas, who shape our choices, right? I think everybody is an equal stakeholder and equal partner when we need to break walls which exist, and we all need to join together, create a bigger forces to break these walls. So I would like to thank everybody, including my fellow teammates, Medha, Ankur, Shrishti. The list goes on. There's such a large team that we have who've worked day and night to put this event in such a short time together. Then absolutely Nina, who has come forward to support us and also co-create this with us. And then we were able to put this in such a short time together and bring such amazing bunch of people together, right? Then of course our partners, starting from Durex powered Condom Alliance, the Birds in the Beestock program, then our media partners, Josh, Daily Hunt, Quint Fit, our knowledge partners, Purpose, and Shivnara Universities. Everybody has supported us. That's how we were able to put this together and make it reach such a large audience. And like I said, it's just the first step for us to continue working in breaking many walls that exist. And for that, I invite you to support us and to partner with us. We are starting a program which will be going to many more young people in uh, creating more awareness, building their capacities to create safe and inclusive spaces. It's a program we'll be soon talking a lot about on our digital media handles, on our web pages. So I will invite you all, if you have ideas, if how we can come to you, how we can empower young people who are there in your communities, then do feel free to reach out. We are very much accessible through our digital media handles. And we need everybody's equal participation to make this a much bigger moment. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody once again, especially our partners, Ravi Bhatnagar, ASOCHAM, Plan International, definitely Nina, and all everybody together. And we will come again very soon to create much bigger platform and to break many walls that exist out there. Thank you. This is Ashish from MASH signing off for now, and we will look ahead to connect again with you very soon. Thank you. Stay safe. Take care.